Oh, it's gonna be a good one, folks. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
This is Dev Ranch episode number 31. Playing the Fields API.
Play that field.
I'm Jason Tucker. Go to my website at jasontucker.blog.
If you want, websites are a thing, I guess.
They are.
I'm Say Reed. I make WordPress, teach WordPress, freak WordPress, loathe, love, live it, laugh, learn it, WordPress, add all the things, bougie.
And y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Post Formats Balloon, back at it again on the world's most influential WordPress podcast.
That's not a lie.
Speaking of those podcasts, let's subscribe. We're all over the place. And hang
I'm
out
all
with
over
us
the
in
place
our
today, for
Discord.
sure.
Links are in the description below.
And
guys,
we've got a pal.
We have a
Me too.
and it's a what is this, like a phenomenon? No, when it's
Has
like
it been 3 months? I guess
it
it has been
right?
3 months. It's every 3
I think
months.
it was January when we were last together.
Oh.
Possible. I don't know.
You
I
know,
can't remember.
January is 3 months ago, as I just pointed out on
Yeah.
Mastodon. Do you know where your year went? Because
No.
I don't. Hey, sorry, we'll get to your introduction, but I do want to say, because a fan of the show, Jacob, shout out, there he is. What up? Shout out to Jacob, because he just replied on my Mastodon. But he had kind words to say at WordCamp, whatever that was. So thanks, Jacob. Anyway, Scott Kingsley Clark is in the house.
Woohoo.
Yeah,
And
hi,
we-
I'm
Who are you, and what
Scott.
are you doing here?
I was actually hoping you would tell me who I was and what I was doing here.
We said Fields
I just
API
wandered
3 times
in.
and he appeared. Yeah. So weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm Scott Kingsley Clark. I
Allegedly.
am a senior dev at Pagely/GoDaddy, and also the lead developer of the Pods framework.
Can I just
And,
tell you, I did not actually know
stuff.
you worked at GoDaddy. Which is funny. I guess that goes to show you that I just really think Pods is cool, because that's all I think about. I don't even think about like day jobs.
Yeah, it's crazy how like a project like Pods I'm so well known for, but like I it's not my day job. So it's
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I have a little joke down here in my name tag that I don't know if anyone could see. It's PHP. What does it stand for? Pretty hard to fund. That's a joke we'll be talking about soon. But I think that's
Elephant.
fund. I think that's a thing that plagues very many components of our wonderful our wonderful project here. Yeah, turns out Pagely was bought by GoDaddy, made some people very wealthy.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that
You?
Pagely is a GoDaddy company.
I do not
And
forget that ever, not once. Nope.
It's still kind of weird to me because
It happened to-
Pagely felt so singular. Pagely felt like Strubble,
entity?
for better or for
Hashtag not
worse.
sponsored.
Hashtag not sponsored. No.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, but hey, hashtag not sponsored.
I think Pagely had that vibe, reputation, or whatever, because of Pressnomics, which
Sure.
Yeah.
interesting in terms of, something gets acquired, and I assume, I don't know what happened to the Pressnomics like
It's
intellectual property per se, but did it get eaten by GoDaddy? Do you know?
I don't think so. No.
Oh,
That was separate.
interesting.
I think it's all tied up for me mainly because Pagely was so like loudly and proudly like just independent and like free of the whole like venture capital thing and everything else.
They were
But
until they weren't, just like everybody else.
So let's have Scott talk now and talk
I
about.
was gonna say, I was gonna segue to Scott, and I would be like, how much would it take for someone to acquire Pods? Not that that's
2
this
million.
conversation, but I'm just wondering.
2 million. I mean, it's a free
2 million,
plugin, so
okay.
it's very valuable, worth at least 2 million.
Hey.
All right, you heard it here, folks. You heard it here first. Make your offers in the comments. So tell us here's one. If we fix the Fields API, how much would it be worth then?
Still
Five.
quite a lot. Maybe at least 1.5.
Oh, it'd be less.
1.5.
I was thinking it'd be worth more, not less.
Well, like
That's
the
interesting approach.
pods, because we would reduce a lot of the code and a lot of the logic, and so that a lot of people are using pods and ACF and things like that because there's not really a super great way to do that in core.
Right.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
with your advocacy for the Fields API, does that mean that you are slowly putting yourself out of business?
Well, if I do it right, I probably not. I don't think I'm sweating over the people who would rather do things the core way with PHP. And if we get this Fields API, full fledged and out there, I don't think I'm worried about that. I think that's great because we cover all the people that would have used the plugin that didn't really need the plugin to begin with.
That's fair.
So, Scott, WordCamp just happened, and you were having some
Lucas.
interesting conversations there around the Fields API. I saw that at Contributor Day, you had a group of folks like working with you on that stuff. But there also has been some kind of recent conversations around the whole why are you doing the Fields API in PHP? We were supposed to learn JavaScript deeply, and the site editor is JavaScript. What's up with that?
The deeply joke is never dying. It's just never dying. It's gonna be here forever.
You're surprisingly getting some pushback on that.
Yeah, so I was there all week for the Community Summit Contributor Day and WordCamp US. So there Tuesday through Sunday.
Topic.
And I had conversations with I must have been 30 people. Some people I've known online, some people I didn't know yet. And I got connected because there was lots of DevRel people there hanging around, just crazy connections just happening in real life. And so I talked to a bunch of folks, and I at first was like, hey, everyone I'm talking to, first of all, does not deny we need a Fields API. Good. And second of all, it was like, yeah, this sounds cool. But then I started, as the week went on, I started finding more people coming from it from a different angle, from a different point of view that I hadn't anticipated. I should have, but I didn't. And the
how
points
dare
of
you
view
not
that
think of everything, Scott? What
I
is wrong
know.
with you? I think you should chastise yourself for that.
This person, what am I doing with this person here? But yeah, so they started coming back with things like, well, one person would say, it's too late. It's just too late. We're already way past it now. Adding it would just, and then others would come back with saying that, well, we're actually doing things inside of Gutenberg right now that are we don't need it now because we have some stuff in Gutenberg that are working on, or it's coming or whatever. And so I read into that. I did my homework and was like, hey, the things you're mentioning here aren't actually what this is supposed to cover. And then I started to see other people come back with we don't really want to be exploring this in PHP. We want to explore it in the React components and do these things because the admin UI revamp is going to be a thing coming here the next year or two, maybe.
That's
whatever.
not going to have any problems. It's going to go so smooth, and no one's going to have any problems, and everyone across the world is going to convert easily.
There's an
I like the idea
that was involved in that.
I don't. I like the idea of slow changes so that people don't freak out. There's the idea that you could rip off the Band-Aid and be like, here, everything's different. But people literally leave. They make really strong choices based off of that. And I think it's going to be like Gutenberg 5.0, but to the scale. But we'll see. We'll see.
To respond to JD, it's going to be built off of React. I don't see a world where we can get around the fact that we're not going to use the Gutenberg components, reuse those UI elements, and it won't look like the block editor. You're not editing blocks, but you're going to be working with those components and those things that are built from React. And then we're going to see something most likely like the meta boxes were for legacy stuff. So people that had plugins that were adding things, if we detected that they were hooking in there, we would then output those things and have legacy hooks that were run at the bottom or some section of it. So it's going to be kind of like an in-between state again, and it's going to be React.
I spoke with someone at I don't remember if it was at the summit or whatever, but I won't cite them because, non-attribution regardless.
Right.
But it was about that basically they were saying it's kind of like an open secret, but we're essentially rebuilding all of WordPress in JavaScript. That's what Gutenberg is. It's just rebuilding the entire code base in JavaScript. And React.
I see that as one of the things that brought up this whole thing. Like
Right.
Jason Tucker had was like, hey, you should come on the show because you just talked about something on Mastodon. And so I was talking about this idea that I was getting this pushback, but not necessarily like, oh, don't do it in PHP. It was like, everything is going to be shifting. Like even the Q&A from Matt's session at the very end of WordCamp US, they didn't actually get to the question, but someone literally asked the question with like 20 likes or whatever on it. When are we going to replace PHP inside of WordPress core? So I'm just thinking in my head, like, okay, am I going up against just a monolith of a mountain of unfathomable size that I cannot overcome to get something like this, some PHP love for WordPress core?
So, okay, can you just real quick, just like kind of summarize why, like what the issue is specifically, the Fields API issue that you've been championing, just like if you could like summarize it real quick.
Sure. So like the summary is, I want to add a field to any screen inside of WordPress. I have to learn, well, we just did the research at Contributor Day, sat at a table and what was it? 7 people showed up and I didn't ask them to, they just showed up like, hey, I want to learn more about this. How can I help? And we did all the research. It was like 8, 10, some large, just crazy amount of APIs or non-APIs, just totally just using hooks and manual markup to add fields to all these different screens inside of WordPress. So the idea of this Fields API is like, let's take these screens and power them by a unified API so that we have a way to register our fields, the actual, like, here's the data and what they're attached to. Is it a setting or is it a post type? Is it attached to a term or a user or whatever? And then 2, be able to describe that input type. So is it going to be a text field or text area or whatever? And let the admin UI leverage this information to build its UI in those different screens. So yeah, the screens could remain the same as they are right now before the admin UI revamp, but they could then be powered by this Fields API that leads us down that path towards whenever it's time for admin UI revamp, we're not like disconnecting all of the people again. We have all the PHP devs we can bring along for the ride and all of the benefits of having all this structure information right there in PHP where it needs to be. There's no way to get this information right now inside of WordPress. It's not abstracted enough. It's just not there. So like having all that power enables so much more way down the line, even beyond admin UI, like REST API stuff and WordPress apps on iOS and Android and other custom admin UI. Like someone could build whatever they want with the power of this structure without even having to build all the inputs themselves. They just say, hey, get me the fields for this screen and I'm making a screen for it. And this is what it should look like.
That sounds horrible.
The Fields API.
Silly utopia are you talking about, Scott Kingsley Clark? Are you a communist?
The Fields API sounds like it at least in the imagined way that this imagined future that you've kind of like put forward is that things would change to would basically be flexible enough where you could potentially be helping the transition if we do move to JavaScript.
It sounds like
if we do move to, this is the thing that helps move us along.
Oh my gosh! I just realized something, you guys. Literally, you're all guys. This is the problem. It's not a gradient. It like duotone is not a gradient, right? So like we just like duotone is just 2 tones. So it's either on or off, right? But we need the gradient transition. That's where we're struggling in WordPress is on the gradient, right? Like 5.0, all the things we never build the transition. I mean, you're literally advocating for something that would be a transition. It's like a gradient between, PHP and what, React or whatever nightmare is over here. And then, but some people in the project really like duotone and they only want to go from one to the other. This is why the reason I bring this up is because duotone broke in 6.3. So I thought it was funny.
When you have, or when you came up with the idea of the Fields API, Scott, we weren't even really talking about learning JavaScript deeply or making a transition or any of this other stuff. You just wanted better interoperability. You wanted, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to put words. Yeah.
All
So
that stuff still applies.
yeah,
So why does
absolutely.
why is it incompatible, so to speak? Or why is it, like what would be the alternative that other folks are advocating for that you talk to them about?
Well, one of the main advocations I've seen is like we should put all this logic and all of this registration and everything inside of React and JavaScript. And to me, I feel like that just misses the mark entirely because one, we've got to handle saving in a smart way. So it's got to be on the PHP side and dealing with the database. Two, we need to be able to handle other things as part of the saving, like validation server side and having availability to do this beyond just the React interfaces. There's just so much that really requires a PHP component to it. Whether or not that means we have a PHP Fields API and we have a compatible JavaScript Fields API, so you can do things ad hoc in the JavaScript side, you could do that still. But there's just a lot of pushback on the idea that why wouldn't we just use React? Why wouldn't we just use the existing components? Because I heard someone had Mastodon or tweeted or whatever just a couple years ago, we kind of already had a Fields API. It's in the block editor right now. And I was looking at it, I was like, no, we don't. Like literally, tell me what the difference is besides JavaScript. You have a page that's hard-coded with HTML, and you have a JavaScript JSX, whatever, with your components saying, I want this component, I want this component, and all that stuff. Like it's markup centric. It is not abstracted to the point where you have this now be able to handle saving. You don't have it being able to handle the database stuff. All that stuff is not abstracted well enough. You have to take it to the next level. And I just don't see there's a possibility that this could all live in JavaScript unless we in fact did go towards moving WordPress out of PHP into like Node or React Server or whatever it ends up. Yeah.
I feel like there's a push towards not like client side everything. Like I heard some, I don't even remember where I saw it, but I remember that there was a post recently in one of the channels somewhere. And Joost de Valk responded, no, he was like, no, we can't do that. That will server side, that without the server side component, it'll just decimate SEO. And I thought that was really interesting because I had never thought about the SEO implications of server-side or client-side rendering.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, that's interesting. So I feel like with the playground and with it feels like everyone's moving to like JavaScript, React, everything's like on client side, everything's like up here on the surface. Like what happens? Like, how do we get rid of all of that? I don't even understand.
Browsers would have to have like keyframes or something of its render to say like, hey Google, look at this at this state, and hey Google, look at this at this state.
How do we save that stuff? Is that possible? Because you can't save
SEO needs to get better,
right? And that notes block that I don't remember who it was, but was experimenting with this app that was like built all in Gutenberg. Did you see that, Scott? We talked about it on the show at one point a couple months back, but it would bring in notes that would then save to your WordPress posts. But like every time you loaded, it would load new stuff. Like Jason, Tucker, you couldn't get it to work because it was like, just fresh every time.
Yeah.
That's a problem if you have notes, right? Like you need, like, where does the stuff stay at that point if it's all client side?
Right.
Yeah.
This is a question that's not rhetorical. I'm actually asking.
So like if you take out the PHP side of it and you're saying like, if we just do it by client and we have a REST API, I'll send whatever custom field I want or whatever setting I want, then you're like, well, now you open the door because you have an open door.
Right.
That's like historically bad for
no
data.
One's ever exploited any of those. What are you talking about in the history of the internet?
That's why you want to be able to have structured content architecture, like your post types and taxonomies and settings, so that this is the setting and this is the type of data we're expecting back from it. And then also registering it in a way that that you can then get that data out from the JavaScript implementation or elsewhere, like at the REST API, being able to say, the REST API, here's what settings we have and here's the data types or whatever. Like just having something like the Fields API in place would cover almost all those bases without saying, hey, we're going to require you to use PHP to render the fields like that. If you think about the Fields API right now, where we're at kind of a crossroads where the implementation UI side, we can do whatever we want on the API side. We register all the fields and configurations and all that stuff here. Let the block editor decide how they want to use that for the UI. Let the settings and admin UI revamp stuff handle their implementations of the UI.
How else it would work? This is what I'm struggling with. I'm like, doesn't that makes so much sense what you're saying? What I don't understand is like what the other side is saying. Like, what is the alternative to what you're advocating for?
Well, they're saying that we would build all this stuff inside of the React components, inside of these big JavaScript files where we have the markup all put in there through the component embeds, and having all of this complicate things worse because we're in a point where it's very difficult to work within the admin UI for the block editor to extend it to do other things because there's not the same action filter kind of paradigm. There are some, but it's not the same.
Customize it, like just to customize the UI is like really difficult.
Yeah. You've got to go override the DOM stuff and then deal with renders, and there's just so much complication there that it's not even solidified into one point where I found a great solution inside of tutorials or anything else that say, here's how to do this in general, how to do this, modify things. It's just very difficult at this moment. So if we then push further into that and still don't have any of this to leverage and educate, then we're just disconnecting even more people from being able to do more unique experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But where is it still a MySQL database? Like, is it still like, is that or a SQL database? It's not like with the React components. It's just like,
but it could be SQLite. It could be. Like, we don't know where it could go, but
well, see, that's what I think what everyone's pushing for, right? Is like everyone. That's like the new shiny. So like everyone wants that. Isn't that? That's basically what's happening. I don't know.
The new old shiny is what it is.
It just depends on the scale, because the scale of that is the big question. How can you scale the things that you want to do in the client and everything else with the size of a site, with the size of the data content, with the number of REST API requests for what you're trying to get? All these things start to add up. And yes, you load everything in client side or load everything in server side, you're going to have slow render times on server side. Load everything in client side, you're going to have slow UI because things are bogged down, or too many requests, so you're going to have slow internet, or whatever that ends up doing. It's just going to be so many complications. Yeah.
Right.
Scott, how much of the Fields API is tied into doing like the multi-user editing thing that we keep hearing about? Is there much of that being tied into it?
You could say that it's not blocking on either side. However, being able to know the structure of the content severely improves that ability for multi-site editing or multiple editing, multiple editors, like a doc. Go to Google Docs and you have all the things happening. You know what those things are and what components they are and where they live in the data architecture, so that you can handle revisions and other things properly without having to worry about doing all this in the client side, trying to figure out, okay, where does this go? So there's a lot of benefits to be had. It's not to say it's impossible. I know that it would be very possible to do all this stuff. Like all of WordPress could live forever on without the Fields API, but it would severely limit its ability to be adaptive in its interfaces, and severely limit the ability for it to be as extensible, to be able to just say, hey, I want to add a field to this screen and I want it to go here, or I want to add a new section or whatever. Like, that capability is severely lacking. And even in most of the admin UI screens, you can see this is evident because you can't as easily add fields to certain sections or certain screens, especially core settings pages.
Okay.
You know, I want the Fields API in PHP, in like classic WordPress core, partially. I mean,
not to confuse with classic press.
Funny you should mention that.
Oh no,
because if it is in PHP, if it is in that part, when people inevitably have this admin redesign shit fit, like classic press tier shit fit about like, oh no, the admin's changing. Well, now we're going to make another classic press, and it's with the old admin. Like, none of
Old
this new
admin, but
admin
yes,
crap.
block editor.
Right.
Yeah.
So
give me that fork.
JD asked in the chat, like, where's my fork? It's just like, so weirdly, for a
Why do we
project
do
that's
this to
20 years
ourselves?
old, I know that there have been some forks in the past. They've fizzled out, whatever. For a project that's 20 years old, I'm surprised that there haven't been more like loud vocal forks, even if they do, just like a lot of loud vocal forks of projects fizzle out in a few years.
It's because
But
we throw parties that are called WordCamp. 100%. That's the reason, because no one wants to leave the place where the parties are.
I think the fork is WordPress.com.
Yeah.
Because at some point you're
That's
gonna take
Wait,
this
are we a
this
fork
new
of
admin.
WordPress.com, or is .org a fork, or is
Yeah,
.com
right.
fork of
Exactly.
.org?
It's like,
I'm not
which
sure.
one are we building for?
Yeah,
Well,
I'm not sure. I have a quick question. So this one's a little more rhetorical. So just so I'm clear, you're talking about building something that would be implementable now, empower all the sites that exist currently, be backwards compatible and future compatible, versus a solution that is not yet unknown, it's just not yet known, and would be super complicated and would also not be backwards compatible.
I'm sure they could find ways to do backwards compatibility like the meta boxes are right now, but it's a totally separate save request as well, and separate load processes there for the hooks compatibility. But yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. That this is something that is backwards looking and forward looking at the same time.
I just
it enables so much more.
They make so much sense that I'm like, I must be misunderstanding this. I must be missing something, because I can't. This is where I get frustrated with really full on devs, because I think that the problem a lot of the times with tech in general is that the devs get so excited about the next thing that's happening that they forget about all the cool stuff that's happening in the things that already exist, like CSS, for example, which is like just doing all sorts of cool stuff, and everybody's like, no, who needs CSS anymore, because they're just bored or something. Like, so this is what this sounds like to me, because it doesn't make sense from a project standpoint to advocate for something that is like not like to advocate against implementing something that would both ease the transition and empower the future and the past. Like I cannot grasp it. So
yeah,
I must be missing something.
I mean, during the Q&A, we had a ton of times that the Fields API was mentioned.
The Q&A at WordCamp US.
Yeah, and Scott, you were there watching. How was all that, and how did that go for you?
How did that feel?
Well, so
I have
whole
video if you
conversation,
need to pull up any of it.
Like one thing came up in one of the presentations from, I can't remember if it was Matt or if it was Josefa, but the idea of like, hey, we should take our structures of some plugins and make sure we're using like similar data structures. And one area was LMS, and other areas were talked about like SEO. He's like, oh, we should do that with SEO too, and all these other plugins. And
yeah, SEO
I'm thinking to myself,
structure. What are you talking about?
Same structures, and making data more portable and making configs more portable. And I'm thinking, hey, this ties in really nicely with the Fields API. So as soon as they announced the public URL for where to go ask questions, I quickly typed on my phone with 2 or 3 fingers, if I could, this question about the Fields API, and said, hey, given the fact that we want to push towards better interoperability with things like LMS, what if we did that? Put that kind of power behind the Fields API. Like, can we do that as a project? And Matt replied with some interesting responses. A train of thought as well. Jason, did you have that clip you're able to play?
Yeah, I can pull it up here.
What clips?
It's a clip show.
Very early on the Drupal front. It actually predates WordPress by a couple of years. So I'll check that out.
There we
These
go.
caching and off by one errors.
Yes.
Well, like, what can we do
Almost.
around that? So cool. LMS question. Long-term planning is great, and the LMS improvements will be awesome. How much support can we get behind a project like the Fields API, which is making progress? Did you even work on the Fields API at the contributor day? With everything around it?
I saw.
Oh, you couldn't hear
hand
me
and a
yell.
half. Okay.
I yelled.
So maybe that's
I
also
bet you
something,
did.
WordCamp Asia is coming up. And there's also other WordCamps with contributor days. So maybe we could do like a little table on that or something. I have to admit, haven't seen the latest with Field API. So it's making progress. I'm not aware of the latest. This
It's
is,
time for DMs,
as
Scott.
you might have seen, like Drupal is actually exploring Gutenberg. And so it might be actually really, really cool if Drupal adopts Gutenberg, which I think is right now the best
Oh
thing
my
about
goodness.
WordPress. So it's also looking like, well, what's the best thing about Drupal we could adopt? And they have like some awesome custom, they call it CCK, custom content kit, I think. They call it Fields API? Oh, in Drupal it's called Fields API now? Did it used to be called CCK? Oh, it did. Okay, all right. I'm just old school.
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
think
2016.
my
Boy,
So
oh
it's
boy.
interesting
That's
that the
so
fact that like
funny.
he mentioned that like maybe we just use their Fields API. I'm just like, so there's so many complications to that. The fact that the code base is entirely different, the structure is
how-
entirely different logic and name. They're using namespaces and so many other areas that are like, it's not, you can't really rip it out because it
Right.
relies on so much of Drupal itself. But
So
it's
do we just buy group?
It's so
Drupal?
funny. Like Matt just tossing stuff out there. He's like, I don't know anything. What's going on with what's it called? Oh yeah, we should do that. What if we had a table? Should we? What a great idea. What
Get
is
a-
someone named Scott
Get a
Kingsley
little
Clark did that
table
yesterday?
going.
Get a little table going. Exactly.
Just get a little
Are you
We
kidding
had
me?
that table. Yeah, we had it at contributor day, and we had like
You
awesome
guys should
people
just-
like Corey and so many others like Ryan
real
and
question-
Alex Stanford.
Is it a SQL table or a SQL light table? That's really. I think that's really where we're going to have to draw the line.
We didn't really store much, so it could be SQLite.
I was like, I'm making database jokes. Hey, how come we don't have sound effects in this show?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a reason.
Yeah, well, that's fine. All right, never mind. All right. I guess, I mean, do we have more? Because I guess we're in overtime now because,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
I'm
this
just
whole
so fed
idea
up.
of taking like Drupal and tying that in. I mean, even like, we got folks in chat here are saying, like just get them to merge and, there's, I don't know.
I mean,
There's, like,
because Matt is like,
so
how
much going
about
on
we
there.
just take my Gutenberg and make it better, and then everyone can just give me all the things that they've already made, and I'll assimilate them. That's what it sounds like to me here, right? Like it's like as long as we don't have to, someone could do some work about that. I don't really have an opinion, but as long as we can just pull it in, that's what it sounds like.
So
I
does
really-
like the code base of WordPress not matter? Is that what we're really coming down to? Is just
That's
like as
right.
long as the front end is good and WordPress.com runs well on the front end of it, and you never have to actually touch the back end of it. Is that it? I don't know.
I just
I'm
want to
having a
say
hard time
one
with this.
thing as our closing word. May I?
Closing. You already want to close out?
Oh wait, isn't it 33? Aren't we on overtime?
Yeah,
We don't have
but
to
we got a
close.
little bit.
Fine, I'll just say a word then. I'll say it. And I hope it strikes fear deep in all of our hearts equally. Calypso. That's all I want to say to everybody. Ooh. I feel like the admin UI and Gutenberg and stuff is like really Calypso. Like Matt has an idea and like Matt is doing this idea and then it's just gonna like boop. Everyone else has to do the idea too. Because Calypso was definitely implemented in .com and not in .org in the same way at all. So that was definitely a trying to shove a .com into .org, like trickled sideways. I don't know which way it's trickling. Up, down. But I feel like this is very similar because even just the admin UI designs to me feel like they are representing the needs of a more .com audience. So
I just hope that the admin UI stuff that does happen goes a little bit better than the WooCommerce, like the new WooCommerce admin rollout, because that was available as a plugin for a while, and anybody, and I know that Tucker and Say, you don't really spend a ton of time with WooCommerce, but it was happening as like I was spending a lot of time, and the amount of, and I hope that the developers at Automatic had learned a lot about it, because like the Ajax calls that it was making on the back end were heavy. All of this stuff where like sites were like DDoSing themselves just because people were leaving admin pages open, and I really don't
yourself
want that.
is like really funny to me. It's like, wow, that has to really be.
Is that just all Heartbeat? Is that just all Heartbeat stuff that was making that happen because of the admin, or what was going on there?
I mean, they were throwing up some more dynamic stuff like sales data and things like that. But I mean, you know, we are, and there has been work on the whole interactivity API, so maybe that'll get a little better. I don't want to necessarily throw the WooCommerce admin developers under the bus, because like it looks a whole hell of a lot nicer. But while it was in beta,
update, I missed that.
I mean, they worked on it for a number of years.
I haven't seen it lately. I should go check it out.
So maybe the Fields API just needs to do stuff for WooCommerce, and then that's how we make it.
In the door.
That's how we get the.
Well,
you got to speak. You got to speak Matt's language here.
For Tumblr, and you're in.
Well, that's the beauty. Like, you can use the Fields API for core stuff. We're talking about it for core stuff, but the big deal is, and obviously, it scared Jason Cosper completely to his bones.
Oh no, I gotta go right now.
But seriously, you could use this in all the plugins. So let's just imagine the big picture. Like, I can have WooCommerce settings, and I can have all these other screens inside WooCommerce, and WooCommerce extensions, and Gravity Forms, and Give WP, and whatever other plugins you want to think of. All these have different setting screens and different form needs. And obviously, Gravity Forms is building actual forms, so they don't really need a Fields API in this sense, but they could leverage it for a lot of different things inside of their own screens to make them more extensible. And someone's adding a field to a setting screen inside of WordPress core can do the same exact thing within a setting screen on WooCommerce and a specific tab or whatever they're targeting. Like, this becomes just so easy to be used everywhere. If we can get it to that point and we get everyone to leverage it, it'd be extensible. Like, if you want to extend the Fields API to do even more, you could do that, and then you can use it for the things you want to do. When I think about that, it just makes me super excited just to think about it.
So excited. I have one, I guess, probably final question, especially since we already lost Cosper. What, especially now that you did contribute today, which you did you got a little table together. You had what Corey Hugard is saying here was the best first WordCamp experience ever. So I guess it's also the only first word experience ever, but that's okay, Corey. You're the best pods developer I've ever met, Scott Kingsley Clark. No.
Thank you.
So here's my question. What has to be done, and how much of a hurdle is it to just do it? Because I am getting more familiar with the just do it ethos than I ever have in my life. In relation to WordPress. So what's the big hurdle? He's back.
The biggest hurdle, I would say, is, well, we need contributors to like weigh in. Like, we need to make sure we're going the right direction. We've been doing research stuff, and now we got a couple of proof of concepts put together, and we're looking at doing a little bit more research. I'm actually pulling legitimately some feedback from Matt's Q&A, like, hey, what if we looked at the Fields API from Drupal? What does that look like? And how, can we learn anything from that and apply it towards ours? So it's not like every piece of feedback goes away into the ether. I think everything is really helpful in getting a better big picture, so that when we're ready, we already have a draft proposal. It's not really all the way done, but all we have to do is make sure we're all on board with the direction. The reasons, of course, is one I think a lot of people get. And then the way that the API is going to be structured and looking. If we can get everyone on board with that, we can get like companies. Like we've got like, what was it, like 4 or 5 of the people at that table work or are sponsored by GoDaddy. That's just insane. Like, I didn't even know these people. I never met any GoDaddy employee in life. Like, So this was kind of naturally like, oh, hey, these people are showing up.
Organized together
Wait
in
a
your own
second.
homes.
Get
I can work
resources
with you.
behind this. Get these companies to say, yes, we want Fields API because it would be helpful for the community and also the plugins we're building. GoDaddy has plugins for WordPress core.
Okay,
and
wait.
so
So
there's
just
all these others.
assuming the buy-in part could be handled, what so you said that, so the direction, all of that stuff's really kind of like soft things that need to be done, right? Figure out the direction, agree with that, figure out the reasons, agree with that. Like, so the only one that I heard really that was technical is the structure specifically. So is that like a big hurdle that's there, or is that just something that needs to be agreed on as well? Is like you have a draft structure essentially, and it would just need to be like, doop, thumbs up.
We have a couple of proof of concepts of that structure. One of them is based off the Customizer API, which is kind of like a soft spot in my heart. Not necessarily because I love the Customizer API, but as I started using it as a basis of the Fields API originally, like a few years back, it was like this. It's very familiar for people. Right. It's an API that is the most full-fledged API inside of WordPress core currently for PHP for interacting with forms. In this case, the Customizer API sidebars and things like that. It is just super really concise. You know, the way the structure of the classes are, it makes a lot of sense. Then there's also more modern PHP structures we could use. There's like way more we could go in leaning into the PHP 7+ space. There's so many more ways you can think about it from computer science and the way you're structuring your content and data. Like there's just so many things. Yeah, it's science.
You're blinding me with it.
How do we make?
You can keep talking. I'm just making side comments.
God, how do we make the table bigger? How do we make this table that the tiny int table that he kept talking about? How do we make that bigger so it's
wait, I still haven't heard any technical obstacles. You have
I know, but I think making this table bigger is what's going to bring those technical people in.
Well,
just
yeah,
like bring in the marketing people.
Is that where we're at? Like, do you still have technical problems to solve, or is this a sort of a public relations hurdle, like a convincing enough core devs that it's a good idea?
Both. So we have technical. We still have to sort out that proof of concept. Like, what is the API going to look like? The specifications, because last time we tried to do this, we had all the feedback was why didn't you do it this way? I would have done it that way, and I would have structured this way. And we got all that feedback late in the process. And so we're hoping to pull that feedback in as soon as possible from core contributors, from people that would use this in their plugins, to make sure that we're covering those use cases, at least from the structure side. UI implementation can be all in a different tackling on a different place. We're talking about the API itself so that we can leverage this across WordPress core and ultimately the long term. Then in terms of the how do we grow the table, we've got core fields channel inside of WordPress core, the make Slack. We have the GitHub repo, which is github.com/Scott K. Clark with a 0 for the O, and then /WordPress-Fields-API. And there is a repo where it's actually been pretty active the last couple of weeks with all the people that joined that initial table. So we're getting lots of interest. People are still putting time in. Corey was amazing because Corey was still pushing up PRs even the day or two after Contributor Day. Corey Hugart. I'm excited because this is the most we've ever had at this point. Like the previous Fields API, we didn't have that much like interest in people collaborating and helping. This is the biggest group we've had. So I'm feeling very positive about it. I'm insanely invested in it. Like I don't want to quit until someone says, like until Matt literally says, no, I'm not doing this ever.
Like that's what he did with the foundation, saying, nope, no, the foundation is never going to fund people. We're not doing it now, and we're never going to do it. And I was like, okay, I'm believing you at that. So until he says no, and in fact, he actually said that in his talk too. I think someone said it's not a yes, but it's not a no. Was it something like that? Like there was a conversation about that. I might be putting too many things together, but I think that if you can figure out, you and your bigger table can figure out how to get it in there, just the API, people will figure out the UI part. They'll make that, like that's what WordPress does best, right? You give them a little tool and then everyone's like, look what I can do with this tool, and comes up with like 10 million implementations of it. So like, even if it's like, I mean, couldn't it would it be able to be a plugin first? Like, so it's a plugin that you.
It was before. We
Yeah,
had a
I mean,
plugin.
would
We
that
actually had a plugin that was the API, and then we also had a plugin that let you like almost like an ACF plugin that let you actually add fields to
Oh,
it
wow.
from the UI. So like you could create new fields
Holy moly!
from the admin area, and it was kind of like a very stripped down core experience. So
I just
yeah,
feel like
it could be a plugin.
if you could get that plugin of just the API component, and like someone could like turn it on, you know how when you turn on Gutenberg, it just turns on and then you have other stuff, right? So you turn it on, and then everyone who can do things with that information will be, be like, look at all the stuff we can do. And then you have even more critical mass because everyone's like, this shouldn't just be in a plugin. I want this in core so I can do this without having to have this be like a required plugin for something. Like, so I feel like if obviously there's the implementation and the UI component is really important to the project, but I think that part could be where you get critical mass as everyone just like gets really excited about using it.
Or dashboard notifications. That would do it too.
Yeah, I'll take either really at this point.
That works too. That's so cool. So I do want to say we did. It does look like we got you some people for your core fields channel. So that's helping.
We'll see you in 9 months.
Michelle's gonna head over there, so that's where people should go, right? If they want to work with you on this, what should they do?
Yeah,
how do they?
Yeah, that's where we're
get involved?
collaborating right now. And if you're not wanting to do anything in the public space and you're like, hey, I want to contribute, but I don't want anyone to know about it. Like if you're a Drupal developer and you're like, I don't want anyone to know I'm doing WordPress stuff. You can always reach out to me. I'm on the Slack, Scott K Clark with a 0, but you can also hit me up on email like scott@skc.dev, skc.dev. That's the email.
Yeah, like if you happen to work for a company that doesn't want this to happen, but you want to do it anyway. Yeah.
On the down low, I'll help you contribute.
Quiet contributing. It's the new everything. I love it.
We're all about the quiet contributing around here.
Thanks so much for coming on, Scott, and
Well,
explaining all this. I feel like next year we're going to have you on in a few months, and it's going to be really, like, I think there could be more progress. I think you have momentum.
I'm hoping. We just have to keep that momentum going, and so far it's just rising. So I'm very, very hopeful. And like I said earlier, I'm advocating with Courtney Robertson inside of GoDaddy to become more like get our resources behind it. Like give me more time, give everyone else more time on the team to make this all happen, because GoDaddy's like uniquely positioned to give this the time it needs, because other companies have other things that they're focused on. Like Automatic is hyper focused on block editor stuff. Like if we can just kind of fill that gap, we have a gap to fill. I think we could do that. And then all these other contributors like Corey Hugart, like just are bananas awesome. And I'm just super excited to have everyone involved.
Yay. Especially for the loud contributors.
The ones in the back that were yelling.
Yeah.
Scott, thank you very much. We'll have you here in 9 more months, and you'll talk about how everything changed.
I hope so.
Can't wait for that story.
Everything's going great.
We could
It
say
was so easy.
We were there when it happened before the Fields API. That's what I want. That's my goal for
Let's
this.
do it.
Yeah. Does this thing even work anymore?
Over there, I guess not. I don't know what's going on here.
We're on some of those things that you listen to the stuff on. So go check your thing and type in water cooler. But you might already listen to it because you're listening